Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to buzz off on a super cool mission into the amazing world of bees. We're going to find out exactly how they make one of the yummiest, stickiest treats on the entire planet, honey.
I mean, just look at it. It's delicious on toast, it's great in tea, but have you ever really stopped and thought, wait a minute, how does a tiny little bee make this? Well, get ready because we are about to find out.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Making honey isn't just one bee doing one little job, no way. You've got to think of it like an Olympic-level team project. It takes thousands, and I mean thousands of bees all working together, and every single one has a super important part to play. So, our adventure kicks off with Part 1, the Great Nectar Hunt. And for this, we need our star player, the worker bee. Seriously, think of her as a special field agent on a top-secret mission to find the best, sweetest flowers out there. So how do these little agents find their targets? Well, they basically have superpowers. They are drawn to bright colors, and they can follow sweet smells from really far away. But here's the coolest part, their secret weapon. They can see special ultraviolet patterns on flowers that are totally invisible to our eyes. That's right, they are like tiny flying detectives. These secret UV patterns act like a secret code, or maybe a glowing landing strip that guides the bee right to the middle of the flower, where all the treasure is hidden. And once they find that treasure, this sugary liquid called nectar, they need the right tool to get it. That's where their proboscis comes in. It's kind of a fancy word for their special long tongue that works, get this, just like a drinking straw for slurping up all that yummy nectar. So where does all that nectar go? Not into their regular tummy for food, nope. Bees have a second, special stomach just for carrying nectar. It's called the honey stomach, and you can just think of it like a little built-in backpack they use only for hauling nectar back to the hive. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so our worker bee, with a full nectar backpack, flies back home. And now our adventure takes us inside the hive, which is like a non-stop, buzzing, super organized honey factory. This is where the real magic starts to happen. See, the nectar the bee collected is thin and watery. It's nothing like the thick honey we know. So what's the secret recipe? How do they turn that sugary water into that golden syrup? Well, the magic actually starts on the flight home. While that nectar is sloshing around in the honey stomach, it starts to mix with special things from the bee called enzymes. And these enzymes are like tiny little magic potions that get to work breaking down the sugars in the nectar. And, well, there's no easy way to say this. Those enzymes are basically bee spit. Yup, it's a little weird, I know, but it's a super important step. So let's all just agree not to think too hard about that part and, just keep going. Okay, so back at the hive, the worker bee passes her load of nectar to another bee that's waiting inside, a house bee. And yeah, that's a real job title. They actually pass it from mouth to mouth. This amazing teamwork is what keeps the whole factory running smoothly. And now we've reached the final and maybe the most important stages of the whole process. This is where the house bees work their magic to turn that nectar mixture into what we call liquid gold.
So here's the key. The biggest, most important difference between nectar and honey is just the amount of water. Nectar has a lot of water, like 80%, which is why it's so thin and runny. To become that thick, stable honey, they have to get almost all of that water out. But how did they do that without any machines? They have their own amazing system. First, the house bees spread the nectar into all the little hexagon-shaped cells of the honeycomb. Then, they all get together and flap their wings incredibly fast, creating a warm breeze all through the hive. They literally become tiny, living fans. And all of this constant fanning makes the extra water in the nectar just evaporate little by little. They just keep fanning and fanning until the water level drops all the way down to about 17%. And right at that moment, bam, it's officially honey. Now that the honey is perfect, they can't just leave it sitting out. They have to store it. So they make their own wax, it's called beeswax, and they build a tiny little wax lid right over the top of each cell, sealing the honey inside to keep it fresh. It's just like putting a lid on a jar. And when I say fresh, I really mean it. This whole natural process is so perfect that it preserves the honey not just for the winter, but for an unbelievable amount of time. We're talking potentially thousands of years. No, really. Just take a look at that number. 3,000. That's how old some honey was that archaeologists found. And you know the most amazing part? It was still perfectly good to eat.
This is a completely true story. Scientists who are exploring ancient tombs in Egypt found these old clay pots, and they were filled with honey from 3,000 years ago. Because the bees' process is so perfect, the honey never spoiled. How amazing is that?
Okay, so we know how they do it, which is incredible, but what about the really big question, why? I mean, bees don't go through all this trouble just to give us a tasty treat for our toast. They have a very, very important reason.
It all comes down to survival. During the cold winter months, there aren't any flowers, which means no nectar, which is their main food source. So honey is their pantry. It's packed with all the sugar and energy they need to stay warm and fed, keeping the entire colony alive until spring comes back around and the flowers bloom again.
So let's do a super quick recap of this whole sweet story. The bees collect nectar, they add their own special enzymes, they evaporate all the extra water by fanning their wings, then they store it in the honeycomb, and finally, they seal it up with beeswax. It's a perfect, natural process from start to finish.
It is just incredible what these little creatures can do with some teamwork and a little bit of nature's magic. Bees are absolutely amazing, aren't they? It really makes you wonder, what other tiny creatures out there are doing incredible things right under our noses?